Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm V. LaBianca.
This is Skeptic Generation, and we need to talk. Hey V, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
It's doing really, really well. We are experiencing a cold, rainy, thundery morning. So just in case, if the power goes out, we apologize. We're probably okay. It's just the weather. But unless that happens, we're going to do our best to keep this show out live and streaming. And we're glad you're here with us.
Absolutely.
It is May.
May 1st.
Oh my goodness.
Happy May Day, everybody.
It was in May that we started Skeptic Generation on, what was it, May 22nd or May 21st?
May 23rd.
Sure, the 3rd. 23rd.
And this year, the Sunday of will be the 22nd.
So we've got a plan, actually. We are going to throw this show a birthday live stream. We're going to be doing our regular thing, except instead of seeing us taking callers, we're going to be switching it up and maybe doing something else.
Well, it's something a little different.
Yeah, something to celebrate.
Yeah.
So it was on the other screen. V almost hit me.
I was so scared you were about to say what it was.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I mean, no worries. Like it's not like show stopping, but technically it is because it's going to stop the regular show.
True enough.
Do something else.
But it will be live.
Yes.
So we're excited about it. But we have a couple of announcements before we dive into calls. It has been a really amazing, interesting week, and we kind of want to share a couple of things with you guys. First off, this month is we're going to be doing our Patreon hangout.
Yep.
It's going to be on the 19th. So patrons who are at that level, we hope to see you in our Discord where we're going to sit down, hang out for an hour, chill, talk if you want, time with us. That is something that we're looking forward to. If you want one-on-one time with us, that is another patron level, and feel free to do that and we'll reach out to you. Other than that, what else do we got, V?
We had some really amazing news this week.
Yeah, we did.
So let me paint you a picture.
Yeah.
I get this Twitter message from somebody who is asking about this production computer and what is needed to get us to a place where we can afford one. Mm-hmm. And so I got her in touch with Eric. Mm-hmm. And Eric, you had a conversation.
And I was just like, okay, here's what we got so far. We're a quarter of the way to our goal. And she was just like, okay, I got you, bro.
Yeah.
And so we are all of a sudden light years closer to completing our year's goals.
Yes.
So Dawn, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you.
Thank you. You will see yourself shouted out in the credits as well. But thank you so much. This essentially cuts our plan's timeline by at least 6 months. So what we were expecting based on the rate that we were being able to save, we would have enough for a computer, which is that first step, by the end of this year, 2022. And then we could start talking about a producer, talking about a better set. But that computer had to come first.
Yeah, and with that is going to come some changes to the set. It's going to...
I'm so excited.
Yeah, so really, honestly, V and I have just started talking about what that might look like last night. So it's going to be a little bit, but we want you to be there along with us for the ride. So for patrons of all levels, stick around because I'm going to be doing a live stream for patrons where I'm going to put the computer together.
Yeah, we're going to
build all of it.
You're going to build the computer in real time and walk people through it and just hang out.
Yeah, so if you want to join, patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. And as we put it together, if we do have any other needs or anything like that, I'm going to be adding those things to the SkepGen Amazon wish list.
Yeah.
I am just flabbergasted. I am so grateful. We both are.
It's going to be amazing. And this has just given me that boost of yes, we're doing this. We're making it happen.
This is a thing, damn it.
So thank you again, Dawn. We really, really appreciate you. the only other thing that I wanted to talk about is the topic.
Yeah, you're kind of pissed off, aren't you?
Well, no, actually. I'm actually kind of thrilled today.
Okay.
Because I am part of a church now. And before you get your panties in a twist.
Yeah, what the hell, V?
Let me explain.
You know, you kind of go into these relationships with, some ideas about the other person.
So, essentially, this is the... Oops, it didn't go over the video.
It did not. So let me...
What we're going to do is we're going to just go back there.
Select it and go like that.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
I still have things to learn. So, it is called the Church of Prismatic Light, which, granted, sounds a little bit culty. Just a little bit.
It sounds like it's straight out of Sedona. What the hell? What are you doing to me, V?
So, if you have not heard about it, essentially what this is a reaction to the massive amount of Christian overreach happening in the government right now, especially on a state level. A lot of the bills that are coming out that are, the bathroom bills or the trans kids in sports bills or like all of these restrictive bills around both reproductive health care and also affirming health care for trans people. This is essentially that version of Satanism, or the Temple of Satan. So what it does essentially is they have filed for nonprofit status. Mm-hmm. They have got it. So now they're in the process of doing the paperwork to become officially recognized as a religion in the United States. Mm-hmm. And what they are hoping to do, they're very small at this point, is actually provide a loophole.
Religious umbrella.
Exactly. That shield to people who are seeking any kind of medical care or protection under the law in ways that are being infringed on right now.
Like what?
So, for example, they have 7 tenets, and these tenets talk very specifically, not just about being an autonomous person, but also having the right to love who you love, having the right to seek out any kind of medical care that you feel is necessary for you without interference from the government. All of these things are baked into this religion.
Wow, that's so small government.
I know, and that's the downside of this, is essentially what is happening right now is we are being forced into this kind of system where if you want protection, you need to be some kind of religious affiliation, which is so frustrating, but at the same time, I see this as beating them at their own game.
Yeah.
And it is doing something very similar that the Satanic Temple is doing. Weirdly, I have not seen the Satanic Temple talking about the trans bills that are coming out. I don't know if I'm just missing it. So if I am, please feel free to link in the comments where they are taking action there. But to me, there's been some silence, which is why I'm so excited about this.
Nice.
So if you would like to become a member of the Church of Prismatic Light, if you would like to be a Prismatist like me, I'm going to be linking their website and also their YouTube channel. They've got 1.4K subs at this point. They do a quote-unquote sermon every Saturday. It's very, very basic at this point, but I would love to go and just throw some love at them.
Yeah, if you do go, tell them Skeptic Generation sent you so that you can just confuse the hell out of them. I would love that. I would love to get a message from them being like, who are you?
Absolutely. So you may hear a little bit more about them if things do, progress or change or shift, or if they start growing really big, which I would love to see. But in the meantime, if you see Prismatist places, that means that person is somebody who is actively trying to help the minority groups that are being targeted by Christians right now. So it's a good thing.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, I can get on board with this. We're still good.
We're still good. I'm glad we're still okay. Yeah, so last but not least, if you would like to talk about Prismatism or any religion, feel free to call in to the show. Mm-hmm. You can reach us at 585-526-8774.
And particularly if you have a religion of your own, we would love to talk to you about that as well.
Absolutely. So anybody, we would love to talk to you. You can also reach us at tiny.cc/callSG. And if you're very lucky, we've put the cat tree behind us, and it is possible that we may get a visit from the crew cat.
Oh, she's snuggling up to my foot right now.
She's just kind of on Eric's foot at the moment.
Yeah.
We should have like an Eric's foot cam. No, never mind. That sounds bad.
That sounds like a
That sounds like
a Patreon level.
Oh my God. Okay. We need
Trust
to move
me,
on.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. I could just imagine the subreddit for Eric's foot, r/hairballs. It would be awful.
Oh my God. Okay.
Sorry, off the mic. Unprofessional. Okay, you ready to take calls?
Yeah. Who would you like to talk to first?
So Sawyer called in really early on and has an incredible experience. It looks like they were a member of Heaven's Gate for 19 years.
Interesting. All right.
I would love to kind of ask them a couple questions and talk to them.
We asked to call about religions, and hey, this is going to be interesting. All right.
Yeah. So Sawyer in Indiana, you're live with Eric and V. Hey.
How you doing?
Doing good. Heaven's Gate, huh?
Yes, that's right. It didn't start as Heaven's Gate. It started as Human Individual Metamorphosis.
Damn.
HIM, him?
That's right. That's right.
Interesting. How did you get involved in this?
Yeah, what happened?
Well, I guess you would say that I was like an alternative spiritual seeker in 1975 when I went to a meeting that T&O were giving in Walport, Oregon. And when I heard them speak, it made the most sense to me that anything I had ever studied before. So I joined up with them, and I never regretted it for a moment.
Well, I'm sure there came a point where you were pretty glad you left, right?
Actually, I know it's hard to understand and believe, but no, I never was. I felt the need to leave, but I didn't. It wasn't because of the group or what T and O believed. The leaders were named T as in and O, like the notes on the scale, like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So,
are you still a member of Heaven's Gate? Do you still consider yourself a member of Heaven's Gate?
Well, there is actually no group anymore.
Right.
So, no, I'm not a member of that group because they're gone.
Well, they killed themselves.
But I'm a full-time believer of everything that these two teachers taught.
Do you believe that when that group, trigger warning for people apparently on this call, when that group committed mass suicide, are you aware that was a bad thing? Well,
it's not something that is good for other people, but for them, it was the appropriate thing to do. We don't consider it suicide for them.
Do you?
Even though they lost their vehicles, their bodies died, but their souls were actually living.
Oh,
you're still a Heaven's Gate dude.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah, my partner is also on the call, and she's a new Heaven's Gate believer, T&O believer.
Hi, Sawyer's partner.
And for 3 years.
Hello.
Kathy.
My name's Kathy. Hello.
Hi, Kathy. Okay, so there are a couple of things that I feel like I really want to dive into. V, before I do, is there anything that you wanted to say? Because I'm kind of processing the shock at the moment.
Well, my biggest question for you guys is, what about this religion is different from other religions that makes you think that something as drastic as kind of just ceasing to exist is a good option?
Well, first off, I'd like to say that it's not a religion. That is the one thing that we and our teachers did not want it ever classed as. We believe that religions are designed by lower forces, which could be referred to as demons, the devil,
Space aliens.
space aliens, the green guys that come down and abduct people. Those are lower forces. And they created religions to trap people into that thinking.
How do you
So
know
we're
that?
anti-religion.
Wait. How do you know that?
Through experience.
You've experienced lower
just-
beings creating religions?
Yes.
Yes, because they teach the opposite things that came from the older members who took human form in order to teach humanity how to become a member of the evolutionary level above you.
Okay, so let's dive into a couple of these things first. You do realize that's not what evolution is, right? Like, do you have?
Oh no, we're not using evolution in the Darwinian aspect. It's just a level above human. So, like, what happens after we're not human anymore? So, when we drop our vehicles, what happens to our souls, our spirits?
I got you. So, just to make sure here, you guys are not Poes. Are you?
We're not what?
A Poe. That's somebody who would call in kind of as a joke, but it crosses.
Oh gosh,
crosses the
no,
line.
gosh, no.
So,
We have our own channel.
Yeah,
We have our own channel, which we won't mention because we don't want to, you know. But if you guys want to hear what our channel is, but no, we are
That's respectful.
completely 100% believers in Tiendo and the.
Okay.
I don't want to say theosophy or philosophy that they taught.
Well, so let's kind of go over a few fundamentals. Number one, just because something feels right, does that mean that it is right? Or that something feels true to you, does that mean that it is true?
No.
No.
Okay. So how have you determined that what your belief is true if you're not going off of your feelings?
Well, it's a personal choice, and it's like, well,
Because that sounds like feelings.
everybody is not in the same exact place.
Well, I hope you understand on this side that does feel like you're saying it feels right. You know what I mean? Like, can you help me clarify that? Because
Yeah, well, it's all, like, for me, just real quick, because we don't want to clog up your show. We know a lot of people are probably calling in.
You can stay on for a little bit. That's fine.
yeah.
And for me personally, I keep saying came into this information about 3.5 years ago. And what happened for me is I was watching, I believe it was a documentary that was comparing Heaven's Gate, Marshall Applewhite, which is Doe's vehicle name, with Jim Jones and the People's Temple. And so I watched that, and I remember them saying that the Heaven's Gate members were there for 21 plus years. And I thought, what the hell were those people doing there for 21 years? Like, what was this guy saying to them? And in the documentary, they had mentioned that there was this series called Beyond Human on YouTube, and it was just Doe, Marshall Applewhite, talking for like 13 hours. So I was like, oh, I have got to go listen to that, right? And so I listened to the first one, and after I heard it, a lot of it didn't make sense to me, but it made sense to me. I was like,
so
I think I might believe this. Like, I felt kind of crazy.
Well,
so I watched a couple more, and it just made more and more sense to me.
That's kind of scary. You're on from our end. That's a cult, and it.
Well, that's how it is labeled, but
right.
Everything's a cult, right?
No.
Well, it's a subculture. Yes, it is.
No, that is something that cult people say, actually. The whole cult is short for culture is right out of the cult handbook.
Well, yes, that's why Doe said in the HBO Max documentary, they labeled the name of the documentary "Cult of Cults," because they are above the cults, because they're talking about a culture of people that are living on spacecrafts in outer space.
Sawyer, they're calling it the cult of cults because it rose to the level of being so crazy, and I don't like using the word crazy, but so pants on head bonkers that an entire group of people committed suicide over it, and those people are gone forever. That right there makes them one of the most dangerous cults that has existed that we have data about. It is the cult of cults, not because it's better, but because it is so much worse. It stands so far above what others have done that it has earned a notoriety. That notoriety is not a good thing. It's a bad thing.
Oh no, we're not saying that it is a good thing. We're saying that like Christianity is a cult.
I mean, I'm
Christians are waiting to die to get into heaven.
Agreed.
Or hell.
Yep, and I think that.
So instead of waiting for that, you make the decision yourself.
Okay, but why are we using this as a metric? Why are we saying, well, other people have this awful way of looking at the world, therefore I can also have this way of looking at the world? That's not how we make decisions about things.
Yeah, you're talking to two older siblings. It never worked for us.
Well, that's how we're trying to communicate with you right now. That's by using comparisons with other organizations that have been, became popular. Like the religions are all popular.
Right, but you realize that popular doesn't mean correct or helpful. It just means that people like it.
Agreed.
Okay.
We agree with that.
So what you're saying is the reasons that you're giving right now for defending your system of belief is other people do it too. It's popular. These are fallacies. These are not good arguments for yourself or for anybody else.
I don't really think that we're defending our faith or we're just trying to
talk about it.
Compare it with what you guys were kind of throwing out.
Oh, sure.
But
to be fair, I'm sorry. I've lost your name. My head is kind of all over the place.
It's Kathy, no worries.
Kathy. So Kathy.
Yeah.
You're talking to two people, like maybe you've got the wrong audience in mind, because we think that it is equally nutty that people think that they're going to heaven after they die in those.
Yeah, we do too. Yeah, we do too.
Yes.
Like, we're not going to push back on a couple things. I think cult is what the big church calls the small church, and that's fine. But what you're specifically espousing is not only dangerous, and we have evidence for it being dangerous, but it also relies on a kind of thinking that you haven't proven that you're not taking part in, right? It sounds like you're taking the whole, this sounded good to me, this felt right, and I'm going to do it. And you probably will agree with us that there are lots of groups of people who do that who are not right. And so the reasoning that you've given us isn't good reasoning. It doesn't convince us, but more importantly, we don't think it should convince you. So what else do you
I don't
have?
feel...
you know what I mean?
Well, we're not trying to convince you of anything, actually. I don't need anybody to convince us. We're not looking for members or believers.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But we feel like we do have a handle on the ultimate truth that's available to humans.
Right, but you already agreed with Eric that feeling is not an accurate metric for truth. So you just said we feel like we have this higher truth or this higher perspective. That's not enough.
It's hard to say absolutes. Like
well, you better be able to say absolutes if you're going to kill yourself. If you are going to espouse a religion that encourages people to quote unquote leave their vehicles, you better fucking have some absolute truths that you can lay down, is all I'm saying.
Well, but we're not telling people to leave their vehicles.
No, we need our vehicles in order to grow, to learn lessons.
It's like a huge, big picture which is why we have a YouTube channel. So,
because it's smaller.
It's easy to. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking over you guys.
No. So V and I were just.
It's easy to pick out, because I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever called into a show and seen this many people in a chat room, and so I'm nervous. And just talking to you guys, we just found your guys' channel yesterday because one of our friends, I'm not sure what one of our people referred us to you guys and said that we should call in and talk to you guys. And we were like, oh, okay, what's all right, let's check them out and all that.
So what convinced you, or what made you think that it would be okay to call us? Like, and I'm not saying that in an offensive way, but just like, there are plenty of people who are in your shoes who don't call us because they're worried about, getting called out on air or whatever.
We're not worried about getting called out. So
I've been called out by the media for 25 years.
Sawyer's done tons of media interviews. But we wanted to just, honestly, what our goal is to share the message of tea and dough, and we firmly believe that every person on the planet needs to hear this information and decide whether they want to research it further or just drop it and see what it was actually all about. Not keywords, not buzzwords, not, focus on the suicide aspect of it. We believe that was their exit from this planet, and they are in a spaceship traveling in the heavens.
So
that's what we truly believe.
Have y'all heard of Telltale?
Of who?
Telltale Atheist?
I think I've heard a little bit about one of the people that are part of that.
So Telltale is a friend of ours, and also genetically modified skeptic, and both of them have done videos on cults and how people are treated in cults. And what I'd be interested in is what your response to that would be, because there are professionals who've spent their lives researching what people do and how people get brought into cults, and I would be interested in that.
I feel like I'm confused about why you have been alleged. Like, I don't know you, Sawyer. I don't know the work that you have been doing or the outreach that you've been doing, but it sounds counterintuitive and kind of dishonest to say, oh, we're not looking for converts. We don't want to make new members. But also, I've been doing this for years and getting on the mainstream media and calling into shows and encouraging people to do more research into this from the perspective of, I think it's true, and there are fucking people out in a spaceship somewhere. What? What?
Yeah.
How is that honest?
You guys?
Well, it's mostly correcting misinformation. It's mostly that's why he's done media interviews, is because.
Why do you care about correcting misinformation in this case?
I see people in the comments saying that we're trying to convince people to leave their vehicles and their bodies, and that's absolutely not what we're doing. We don't want anybody to commit suicide.
No, we're anti-suicide.
Or lose their vehicles. We are anti-suicide. We need our vehicles to live and to grow and to overcome being human.
So,
but do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you?
Yes, I do understand.
No,
but
wait,
I'm not.
I didn't finish my sentence. I didn't finish my sentence. Hold on. Do you understand that telling people that they are merely, quote, leaving their vehicles and they will continue to go on living as these other people are living in a spaceship somewhere is by definition reducing increasing the harm that suicide causes and increasing the likelihood that people will commit suicide? You are. You're saying you leave your vehicle and you go into a fucking spaceship.
If you kill yourself, you're going to go on a spaceship.
You literally just said that is what you believe happened to the Heaven's Gate members.
That's what we believe happened to them after they were in that classroom for over 20 plus years, overcoming their humanity.
Is that
anybody that's just here right now?
Do you advocate for people to spend 20 years in a classroom overcoming their humanity? Is that something that in an ideal world would work well?
No,
we don't. No, we do not. Because there is no representative from the kingdom of heaven incarnate on this planet right now. So we do not advocate that at all.
How would you find out if somebody was an advocate incarnate on this planet?
We are so getting
representative.
Wait, what now?
A representative from the kingdom of heaven incarnate on this planet.
Right. How would
it's not going to happen again.
It's not going to happen again.
No, not during this civilization. It's not going to happen again because it already happened. And this is exactly what the Christians got off the track, but exactly what Jesus taught was going to happen. He was going to come back, and he was going to take souls that were brought back to take over human bodies in order to go through the rest of their program. These are souls that are older than us. So they've been through the human kingdom for generations and generations of time. And they've experienced things in the human kingdom, and they know they don't want those things anymore. And so they break away from the human kingdom. And it's an evolution of mind.
All of these things that you are saying
it's
right
a training
now,
program.
all of these things you are saying right now is advocating for ending your life.
No, that's
No, it's not.
It is, if you are saying...
Wait, Bob, can you tell me how you're... Because I'm curious what we're saying, how you're hearing that.
If you are saying that ending your life is a result of transcendence and being done, and it's understandable that you would then want to just go and the way that you are describing this is making it an option.
From what it sounds like,
It's not black and white.
let me see if I got this, because maybe... Are you saying that that was an option for the people who did it, but that option is off the table now for good, or at least for anybody considering it now, so that option is gone?
That's what we believe.
Yes.
That option is not available. If you were to kill yourself, you're not going to go into the kingdom of heaven just for the fact of killing yourself.
Right, and there's that asterisk, just because you did X. You would also have to do X, Y, and Z. And you might not believe that it's ever going to happen again or that anybody should. But if you are propagating the same beliefs that led to that mass suicide in the first place,
then the next Marshall Applewhite could show up tomorrow.
And you would be validating that.
But nobody would, well, I don't want to say but nobody, but that person wouldn't be believed, because there have been people that have said, oh, I'm Doe, I'm Marshall Applewhite, and everybody do this. And people are like, whatever, troll.
Marshall Applewhite.
Because that's not...
Right.
They're not no Marshall Applewhite. They're not no Doe, right? Because he was a physical representative of the kingdom of God on this planet, just like we believe Jesus was. We believe that Doe was the same soul that was in Jesus.
Yeah, I
live on spacecrafts.
We believe Doe was the same soul that was in Adam as well, and Adam started this experiment on the planet.
Okay.
Okay, how do you know this?
Because it feels right.
It's just kind of like, how do you know anything? Like, how do you know the sky's blue?
Because I've gone outside and I look at it and then I ask other people, why is the sky blue? And they give me a scientific breakdown of exactly what the dust in the atmosphere does to UV rays. That's how I know the sky is blue.
We can actually tell.
Okay, let me talk to how you can know something, okay?
Sure.
You guys, I'm sure, know things.
Yeah.
And there's other people that would say that you don't know it.
Sure.
Right? But you know from experience, right? So, like for instance, you could be somebody that knows that alcohol addiction is a terrible thing, and that you don't even have an interest in it because you know that that addiction is a terrible thing to do to your body and your mind.
So,
okay? But somebody else that hasn't been through that doesn't necessarily know that. So they get into alcohol addiction, maybe to a point to where they finally realize that this is a dead end.
Well, so
that's one example how you can know things that other people don't necessarily know.
So let's get a little bit. Let's play with this just a little bit more, okay?
Sure.
Can someone think that they know something, or can someone know something that is not true?
Absolutely.
Okay. How have you excluded yourself from that group?
Well, I guess it's experience. So that it's like I don't. If you knew me and my life, you would see that some of the people in my life couldn't stand me in some ways because they would tell me something and I wouldn't believe them.
And so
I am a skeptic. I am a very deep skeptic.
No, not believing things people say does not equal a skeptic.
yes,
It could just as easily equal indoctrination.
a skeptic would.
No, but I'm a skeptic. Believe me, I'm a skeptic.
If you can say
see things in the news and I hear
two
things that the
sentences,
government
how
says.
does anybody know anything? You cannot say in the next sentence, I am a skeptic.
Yeah, then where you have totally different definitions of the word skeptic. We're talking about Socratic reasoning. How do you know? If you can keep asking why and try burrowing down into those fundamental pieces, that's what we consider skepticism. What you're describing.
Another example. Maybe it would work. I don't know if it will or not. Maybe not.
Well, what you're describing to us is contrarianism, or maybe a kind of pessimism, but not skepticism.
It's kind of hard to describe something that, like, just something that, like I mentioned, the class was held from 1970s to 1997. So that's a huge span of time. Mm-hmm. There's books, there's a website, there's over 1,000 audios of T and Do talking. It's a lot of information, so it's really hard to narrow it down and actually put words on it and then say, like I said, I'm nervous, and so I may say something
Kathy,
that isn't necessarily,
Well, and
yeah, Kathy, here's the deal. What I would like you to take away from this is, if you are looking at what you know, and you are looking at that massive amount of information that you have, and you are realizing that if you take out any one piece, it doesn't work anymore, and you cannot simplify it into something that would convince someone else, that is either a really good indicator that you don't understand it well enough, or that it's not accurate. So if the way that cults work is they slowly add information in to the point where they say exactly what you just said. There's too much. I can't explain why. I can't narrow it down. It just is.
I'm too dumb. I don't get it fully. That's my fault. That kind of.
If you.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm too dumb and I don't get it. I'm just saying it's not something that you can quantify, like, into a little soundbite.
You don't have to quantify it into a soundbite.
But the main thing is we're not trying to convince anybody. We're not trying to convince anybody of anything. We don't want followers. We are not a new group. We don't want converts.
We don't make money from our YouTube channel.
You have people, and you go on media outlets to talk about it. Why is that not advocating for more people to join you?
Well, the reason why we go on media and why shows approach us and want to hear our views of it is to correct misinformation that's out there.
But if you can't explain why it's wrong, like you can't right now, then what is the point? Do you understand it enough to actually refute the misinformation if you are just going to say, there's too much, I can't put it into a soundbite?
No, we address point by point specifics, not generalizations.
Okay, so we are definitely not going to get this episode monetized. But
no, I think that people were giving you guys donations. Come on, y'all got $30.
Hey, nice. Yeah, we're putting that super chat towards the goal. But
all right, well, thank you for your time.
Very appreciative of you guys.
Opportunity to speak a little bit.
Definitely.
Before we move on, I just want to stress that you continue kind of thinking about what knowledge is and how you can know something, because from where we're sitting, you're convinced for reasons that wouldn't convince us. And I think that you should have really good reasons for believing the things that you believe, right? I think it's kind of condescending to think, oh, well, it works for them, but I'm too smart. It doesn't work for me, right? That's condescending. And so I'm putting you at the same level that I'm at. And when I look at this and I go, this doesn't match the smell test, I'm asking you to smell it. And I'm asking you to go, well, how is this working for you? Because we really want.
Well, it's working for me in that I was an alcoholic for 20-something years, and I stopped, and I smoked weed. I smoked weed since I was 19, and I'm 48 now, and I was able to stop that as well.
But could somebody do that and not be onto the truth? Could somebody quit being an alcoholic and be wrong about what their belief systems are?
Of course.
So how is that?
I don't really subscribe to AA because it's Christianized. So, I mean, but for me, I'm just saying, like, that's how I know that it works for me, because it's helped me personally.
Maybe they don't care about what's actually true and they just care about what works for them.
Okay, so yeah.
But if that's the case, then maybe pick something that doesn't end in leaving your vehicle. My
best friend said that to me too, guys.
Yeah.
We are all going to leave our vehicles. There's no question about that.
And we don't plan to leave our vehicles before whatever naturally happens.
Well, that's good.
And
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You guys stay safe, okay?
We lost half of our...
Thank you.
This was half of our episode. That went by quick. Okay, bye, everybody. Bye, you guys. Not everybody. We're moving on to the next caller.
Wow. I do not think that this was sufficiently slapped the fuck down. I did the best that I could in the moment. I don't know who this Sawyer person is, so if it turns out that we just platformed somebody who is just like bananas and harmful, I apologize in advance. Holy shit. Holy shit.
I wanted to find where to sink my teeth in, but I feel like we didn't get there quite.
I think that there is a level of just detachment from reality that cannot be put on a shelf to get into those deeper levels without addressing that first. I don't know.
Okay.
Also, like, if you want to convince somebody about something, we were kind of like slowly getting somewhere, and then you said spaceship. And like, just like for a marketing tip later, I know that apparently you've been doing this for a while, but like the spaceship part kind of just tanks any kind of credibility that you might want to get. But yeah, we are definitely not making any money off of this clip, at least, or probably the whole episode.
But if you know, because you just know, that's not a good reason. If you know because your life got better, but you also understand that that's not a good reason for anybody else, that also means it's not a good reason for you. You deserve better for yourself. All right, let's move on.
All right, who would we like to talk to next? We have Gohan in Texas calling in.
We do have Gohan, and we have somebody wanting to call in about Atlantis.
Oh my goodness.
Where are we going? What kind of episode is this?
A really interesting one. All right, who do you want to take first?
Andy in Texas.
Okay.
I see Atlantis, and why we have good reason to believe that Atlantis was a real place using geology is blowing my mind. Andy, you're live with Eric and V.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey.
Okay, so Atlantis, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a lot of preconceptions moving into this. Most of the people who've talked about Atlantis around me have treated it as something magical, mystical, spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Are you bringing in magical, mystical, spiritual stuff along with your belief in Atlantis?
I am not. I am not bringing in the crystals and the magic and all that. I'm just focusing specifically on the place itself.
So is this possible evidence that a city sunk into the sea?
This is evidence that you could call it an empire, you could call it, a world superpower, whatever you want to call it, did exist, and did spread across the globe before ultimately being sunk into the sea. Correct.
Okay. So where we want to parse here is we talk about beliefs and we talk about, spiritual, magical things and all of that. We're definitely lay people. We're not geologists, and we're not, professionals in that field. And so what we really kind of interact with is those philosophical components. And so,
Sure.
how can we connect here?
Well, I just think it's the reason particular. Let me just kind of let you know why I thought it was a good topic to bring to you guys. I just think that specifically, this is when you say Atlantis, right? I think the view of most people, the mainstream, is just going to be like, well, we're immediately associating that with fiction. I think you get that with a lot of historical, claims too. Like, oh, this is clearly something that is made up.
Well, it's
I just think
it's an incredibly underrated movie, is what it is.
That is true. That is actually true.
Okay, that might be the only thing we agree on in this call, but I'm glad we agree on that. So here's kind of where I'm at. If a city sinks into the sea, I really don't care. Lots of shit has happened, but there's a mythos there that if you were to point to a city that sunk into the sea, people would point back to that and go, that is proof of the mythos. In the same way that somebody could, at some point, thousands of years in the future, pull up a buried copy of Spider-Man and be like, was Spider-Man real? And, well, Spider-Man's in New York. We found the ruins of New York. Therefore, Spider-Man existed as well, right? There's a mythos that's kind of baked in there, specifically with Atlantis. And so is there... let's say we just granted that we found ruins in the sea. Would that prop up any of that mythology for you?
Mythology of that they were a great seafaring civilization with technological capabilities, or like the crystal mythology?
Frankly, that is an interesting... The level of technological capabilities that are posited, while definitely more plausible than magic crystals, does tend to get very, similar reactions from me. So like, it's one thing to say, hey, there was a civilization that had big ships and like went all the places and then they disappeared and their city sunk. It's another thing to say like, well, they invented batteries, or they could tell like what level of technological advancement are we talking about here?
Is it like Roman aqueducts? Because Roman aqueducts were a pretty big freaking deal at the time. Like that?
Well, the time period that I would be talking about, I don't think Roman aqueducts would actually be something that you could point to. But in terms of like technological, when I say like technological advancement, I mean being able to do things that, that for us, looking back on history, we wouldn't place on individuals in that time period. Like how... I'm talking about being able to, move 70-ton stones to create, giant structures. This is without,
Yeah, there are quite a few.
Sorry?
Quite a few versions of that particular thing. So that wouldn't be unique to Atlantis. That would just be something that ancient peoples figured out how to do.
Yeah, Central American people figured out how to do it. They figured out how to do it at Stonehenge. They figured out how to do it in Egypt. I mean, we can see it all over the world.
Correct. And the idea being that perhaps this isn't separate cultures we're looking at, but perhaps just one culture that has spread its influence.
Got it. Okay, so
racism.
no, not that.
Joking, mostly.
It can really piss people off, though, the idea that their culture was not smart enough to figure out that. Right, I do want.
Well, yeah.
I do want to clarify why we said that.
The assumption that, like, I'm not saying you believe that aliens built the pyramids, right? But the assumption that it was some other culture that was uniquely smart that would explain why these other usually, brown cultures couldn't have done it themselves.
Somebody had to come and help you.
Right. So like there is that whole thing, but we'll shelve that for now because I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I want to know why you think that it's all one culture. Like you're saying you're using geology to figure this out. How are you doing that?
Yeah, so I think I think it's just the idea being that I'm not necessarily making the strong claim that it is the case. I'm just saying that we have good reason to believe that it's not, something that is separate or made up. The idea being that, we know, just based on Atlantis, we know that there's a fixed date to it when this supposedly happened, when the civilization was, quote unquote, ruined, right?
What are you referring to here? Because I can pull some of this up while you're talking. Otherwise, I'm just talking.
Sure. So obviously the story comes from Plato, right? Plato is the one that we get the story from. Through two of his dialogues, we know there's a fixed date that's given in one of them, and it's 9,000 years before the time of Solon. That's when Plato says that Atlantis was submerged beneath the waves, that the civilization died. We know who Solon was. Solon was a Greek lawmaker. He's actually an ancestor of Plato. He existed about 200 years before him, around 600 BC. So we know, just doing math, Plato says this occurred 9,000 years before the time of Solon. Solon existed 600 BC, so 9,600 BC is 11,600 BC in our calendar. The reason why I say, why I bring in things like geology and like oceanography is because we know just from, recent studies in these fields that at that exact time, 11,600 BC, we have an event called Meltwater Pulse 1b. It's kind of like this time frame when huge chunks of ice were breaking off of the ice sheets over North America and Europe, falling into the ocean and raising sea levels. So the idea being that if Plato did make this up, right, this culture and this story of when they were, supposedly died out and their influence died out, if he did make it up in 400 BC, he was just remarkably on the nose with the date of what we now know, and using modern geology, was a cataclysmic event on the planet.
Kind of, but let's look at this just a little bit more deeply. We talk about how the global flood that is told about in Genesis was not really a global flood, obviously, but they could be dated back to a time when where that group lived was flooded, right? And there are flood stories from across the world, very similar to Genesis, around that same concept, right? So it is very possible that there is a memory that was passed down orally through these traditional stories about a time way back then when there was rising sea levels and a lot of, cities getting submerged. But that doesn't equal, therefore, this particular story is true, especially if your source is Plato, who has a, pretty well developed reputation for elaborating on the truth and using metaphor and myth to make his points.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, political allegory is like that's traditional. I understand that, the idea being that he's just giving an allegory for nations, overreaching here, or it could be applied to anything. I totally get it. I'm just saying the fact that through both of these dialogues, you never once hear, well, actually, it's not even Plato, because in the dialogues, it's characters, Critias and Socrates is in there, but you never hear any of the characters in these dialogues actually explicitly say, "Hey, this is a work of fiction.
Right.
This is just something that we're trying to do to make a political point here." Combining it with the fact that I think, like I said, geology, oceanography kind of lines up on the nose. I think it just gives us a good idea that we should, reason to believe that we shouldn't just be so dismissive with this idea that a great culture existed at that time.
Let's put a fine point on this, because I think that you got right to kind of where I feel like this gets most interesting, and that is, number one, the city of Atlantis has been found many times, or at least a few times. But let's say this is true. Let's say there was a city, they called themselves that, whatever. Could it be, right? Could you imagine a scenario where upon excavation of ruins that are found, the idea is that these people were technologically advanced, but we verified that these are the people and they were not technologically advanced. And possibly the technological advances that you are talking about came from another people and it was misattributed, misapplied. Could you imagine that kind of scenario?
The idea being that there was an Atlantis before Atlantis that was actually responsible for. Is that what?
Or next door.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I could grant that.
So then, if that's the case, then what I would advise you doing is do what the professionals are doing, and that is follow the evidence where it leads, and before making conclusions about the advancements of an empire, allow the archaeology to learn about that people, because the last thing that you would want when you're talking about discovering the history of a people is being disappointed because they didn't match your expectations. Right? So let's approach this with a positive enthusiasm of learning about our shared human history, our heritage, our cultures, and how we came about to the way that we are. But let's not point towards things like pyramids and all of that to prop it up, because I feel like we're setting ourselves up for disappointment, and it creates this dichotomy, right? Either the Atlanteans existed and they had flying crystal cars, or they never existed at all. And those just don't fit. That's a false dichotomy. And if we just treat it with an enthusiasm and respect, I feel like we're setting ourselves up a whole lot better.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I could agree with that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, this
right,
was interesting. I have a bone to pick with streaming services today, apparently.
Why?
But
What's going on?
well, the kinds of calls we've been getting are just like History Channel fodder. All
know.
right, Andy, thank you so much for calling.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.
I feel like if somebody has this kind of view, like let's say Andy did say that, the Disney movie was a documentary.
Uh-huh.
And that people had flying fish cars powered by crystals.
Uh-huh.
If we just say, hold your horses, let's investigate and allow archaeologists to study these peoples, then either the truth will out, or we will just have gotten the opportunity to learn about these peoples, but don't jump the gun.
I know that this is
fantastic
not
claims. Don't jump the gun.
right. I know this is not always the best place for these long form conversations, but saying a person who was well known for creating mythologies said something that lines up with something we know happened at some point. Therefore, Atlanteans created Stonehenge. There's a little bitty bit of a gap.
I agree. I hope that what I'm saying is addressing that.
Yeah.
I hope that what I'm saying is let's not have the hubris to misapply this kind of stuff. Let's just explore the world. It's fantastic enough as it is. We don't need to add mythology. Anyway. All right. Gohan, because I know you brought them up beforehand.
Yeah. Let's talk to
Gohan in Texas. Gohan, you're
How's it
like
going?
American V.
How's it going, y'all?
Doing well. You know what I heard since we last talked?
Let's hear it.
I heard that people called you a troll on other shows, but you've always been really nice to us. What the hell?
I don't mind. I think troll is kind of it's a word that gets used a lot. Sometimes it's a compliment. Sometimes it's accurate. It doesn't matter too much.
Well, I appreciate that the time that you've called in has been used to really reflect on, talk about things honestly, and not waste the time of us and our audience. So we appreciate that. It says in the notes, I'm just going to read it. It says, you have evidence for Christianity. Lay it on. What do you got?
Yeah, so most of the reason why I call really isn't to convince anybody else. It's really to see if I can kind of become unconvinced.
Cool.
I understand that's kind of a misplacing of the burden of proof, But
But
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
yeah, honestly, it makes sense in that if we were convinced, we would share why we're convinced. And if we're not convinced, we can share with you why we're not convinced.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
And before I kind of get into it, one thing I wanted to discuss was the idea of evidence. Would it be safe to assume that we all agree that evidence can sometimes lead to an incorrect conclusion?
Absolutely. Evidence on its own. So, to clarify, when we're talking about evaluating evidence and what likely caused a thing, the best we can do is make our best guess about what happened. We can't say for sure anything like that. That's just not how that works. But we are comfortable with saying, hey, 99% certainty that the sun rose this morning and every morning prior, so I'm going to make the prediction that the sun's going to rise tomorrow morning as well, right? Like, you can't prove it, but I've got pretty damn good evidence.
Right.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I was coming from.
Sure.
Because I feel as though I do have very convincing evidence, and it has convinced me and many others.
Ooh, okay.
But I understand at the same time that doesn't mean it's proof.
Sure.
And I would hope that even if you guys see there is evidence for God, that doesn't mean you agree there's a God, but you see there is evidence, you just don't think it's convincing.
Right, yeah. There is
there is no evidence.
Right. There is a very bad habit where atheists will say there is no evidence for God. And what they mean is there is no good evidence for God, in my estimation. But that doesn't mean that I could say God is real, therefore, because of what's in my coffee mug right now. That's bad evidence, but that is technically under the category of what I consider to be evidence.
Yeah, it's just as it's presented. So
yeah, all right. So we're good moving forward?
I love that we set this groundwork because we totally would have got stuck on that.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Cool. So I usually categorize my evidence into a acronym that spells out SHAPE.
Okay.
The S stands for science. The H stands for history. The A is probably not the best letter, but I chose it because it makes an acronym. But it's arguments for the basis of logic, reason, and morality.
Wow,
and then the
long.
PE. Yeah, that was the kind of catch-all. It's not really fair, but I needed an acronym.
All right.
And PE is personal experience.
Or
and
physical exercise, depending on.
Last time I called in, I don't exactly remember what we were discussing, but I know we left off on the idea for me to call back with arguments for fine-tuning, and I would categorize that under the S for shape, coming from science.
Okay. Oh, did you watch last week's episode when we talked about fine-tuning?
I watched a clip this morning about you guys with fine-tuning. I don't know when that clip was, though.
Yeah, it might be from this last week, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's dive into it. Let's talk about fine-tuning.
So do you want to give us just a brief version of the fine-tuning argument? That way people who haven't heard it or haven't interacted with it this way can follow along?
Sure. The fine-tuning argument kind of goes like either the universe or life itself is so finely tuned that if things were changed or kind of different in any way, either life wouldn't exist or the universe wouldn't exist. And therefore, it's unlikely that it was an accident and more likely that it was there by either some type of force or person.
Okay, I'm willing to work with that.
All right.
So you believe that our universe was finely tuned for life. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you think that the universe could be better tuned for life, or do you think we're optimal right now?
That's hard to answer. The only thing I can say is how unlikely it is for life to form.
Well, I mean, I'm definitely willing to go down that route, but I feel like that's going down one that's just off to the side just a little bit. I want you to finish, but I may wind up kind of corralling it back to that before we move on.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple of examples of fine tuning. I would say abiogenesis and evolution are my strongest examples of fine tuning. That's kind of why I was going down that route.
Got it. Okay.
Did you want to go down another route?
Well, I just kind of want to put a pin in it. If you say, "Look, this isn't my strong suit," I totally understand. I appreciate the honesty. My first reaction when somebody says that the universe was fine-tuned is for me to point out that the vast majority of the universe is deadly, and because of that, if it could be fine-tuned, it could be done a hell of a lot better than it is now, which kind of serves as evidence against the claim that it was specifically made for life or our life.
Do you think it could be, though?
I mean,
because all evidence I've seen shows that there's no other possible way that life could have formed. Any other way would have been not possible at all, and this was the so far only possible way for life to have formed.
So I oh my gosh. Okay, I'm excited about this. So in order for me to interact with this, there are a couple of things that I'm granting that are kind of being thrown in order for me to engage with you. So for me to respond to this, I need to set aside my skepticism and go, okay, for the sake of this argument, we imagine that there is a God who is capable of creating universes and is capable of fine-tuning them. And then we can move forward and go, you say, hey, Eric, could you imagine, could it possibly be done better? Well, if I thought that there was a God that was all-powerful, then yeah, absolutely. I could imagine a God creating a universe that is entirely habitable and where everywhere that it would be hospitable and people would thrive. Why not? I mean, all-powerful is a huge...
Can I give a quick response?
Yeah.
So for what I'm saying so far, God isn't needed in the assumption that life is hard to form. That's just a scientific fact that life is hard to form. So far, that's kind of where I'm starting from. Mm-hmm. Let's ignore God for a second. Just if we could agree that life either to form or to evolve is not only improbable, just extremely highly improbable.
Well, kind of no, because of what you said just a minute ago, right? You said we don't have, there is no other way that we have seen things could go. We have no evidence that the universe could not be finely tuned because we see this universe and it is like this, therefore it is finely tuned. And that kind of transfers over to this, right? Life is not technically very improbable because it happened. And this is the only universe we have ever experienced. Therefore, the probability of life happening is 100%.
Yeah, given what we have and given the resources necessary,
right,
life may be inevitable.
Right. So, and this is where I want to just highlight something really quickly, which is the instinct to categorize and compare things is something that is just built into our brains. It's how our brains function. And so it makes a lot of sense to look at something that seems very improbable or very difficult, like abiogenesis, and then try and compare that to other options, right? Like it seems like common sense to do. But when we get down to it and actually talk about the statistic probability of a thing happening, if there are no other ways that it has gone, and that is the only thing that happened, then it just happened, right? We can't then extrapolate into, well, it didn't happen in other situations, because those other situations, to our best knowledge, don't exist.
And the fossil record actually bears that out. I feel like I can go on from there, but I want to give you the opportunity to respond to me first.
Yeah, thanks. It's if I could try and make an analogy, I would say the life. I think I might have made it a similar analogy before. Like life forming is a one-time thing that has happened. So I feel like they're kind of trying to compare that statistically against others. So, like, if I drop a ball randomly onto a ground from the top of a hill, you could say, well, it had a 100% chance to land where it landed. And my response would be, well, that's not true. I could have dropped it wherever. I just didn't. It was just dropped there. So, yes, it did drop there. That's 100% true. But it could have gone any other way.
That's the thing, though. We have a lot of experience watching people drop things and having them land different places. But if all we see is a ball on the ground with no understanding of how it got there or who might have dropped it or if dropping it was even something that happened, then we can't make those extrapolations. And that's kind of where the analogy breaks down.
What if we didn't have any other examples of anybody dropping it? What if we only had my one example? Would you still say that's 100% chance of me dropping it where I did?
After the fact, yes.
And if we don't have any...
Okay, I disagree, but I think we're disagreeing more on how we define terms.
Okay, well, we can continue on if we would like. I just wanted to make that point. Go for it.
I'm just kind of... I'm thinking about it, and really my understanding of how life developed on this planet is rudimentary at best. But when I look at the way that it's talked about and the way that it's described in the fossil record, the vast majority of time that life, in quotes, has been on this planet has been as, single-celled organisms, as these tiny, tiny little things. And I think that our brains are just not capable of really understanding what geologic time is. And when we think about how many millions and millions and millions of years went, then those are failures, uncountable failures, until finally, at some point, there may have been, a reproduction. And then from reproduction, do you think it went perfectly? No, we still have millions and millions of years. Like nothing, the idea that nothing was happening during that time, I think, discards what we can be looking at as evidence of failure and failure and failure and failure and failure, and then eventually success. And failure and success are kind of weird words, but just, not lack of adaptation, lack of adaptation, lack of adaptation. And then eventually, somewhere along the line, adaptation took hold.
Which is where I'm confused about the fine-tuning piece.
Yeah.
Because I'm very curious to hear a theist explanation of the fine-tuning argument that includes evolution, because that is something that I think is very useful. But understanding evolution, necessarily, you would have to admit that it is a messy, deadly process most of the time. So where does fine-tuning fit into it?
Sure. So really quick, it kind of sounds like we're going to move away from abiogenesis, and I'm okay with that. And I know, Eric, you were saying that you kind of have a rudimentary understanding of abiogenesis. I think if anybody says they have an understanding of it, is probably lying. The best idea we have is that it came from a revolving cycle of heating and cooling with lava, mud, and the correct
environment,
molecules,
and also so spermia. And to clear this up for the viewer, right? Gohan could say God had absolutely nothing to do with evolution. It just has to do with abiogenesis, and abiogenesis simply means the beginning of life. So once you have life, abiogenesis is over. Then you're talking about evolution. So if you don't think a God had anything to do with evolution, then we can just focus on abiogenesis.
I do think he had a huge hand in evolution.
Oh.
I just want to recap on abiogenesis. I feel very comfortable in saying that we don't have a very good idea yet. I think any biologist that says this is the way is probably not being honest, but the most likely way we know of is kind of the idea I described. That's what I think is true, but almost every biologist is going to say that's probably not very likely, even though it's the most likely one. That's what I think is true, though.
How did you determine that it was the most likely one if you also think that most people who study this would not agree with you?
Well, no, they agree that it is the most likely one. It's just not likely.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Probably, it's unlikely, but that's the best we got.
Got it.
I feel like that is probably where I would stop. And then I would say any conclusions drawn from that, I'm going to be hesitant of. So if you were to draw a conclusion,
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think if you were to look at that, what was just stated, and go, see, God, I think that's jumping the gun like way early, because we're at a point where just more investigation needs to be done.
Right. I'm curious how God fits into this whole conversation, because so far we've come up to the point where I think we all pretty much agree, which is, hey, we're studying this. There are some theories. There are some ways that we think it could have happened. Nobody knows 100% for sure. It seems like it was probably unlikely to have happened. Therefore, what? Like, where does God fit in?
Well, for me, it's not, again, it is unlikely, but I do think that is a way. And if that is the way that abiogenesis occurred, for me, if that's the way, that's evidence that there was a guiding force, whether it's a mind or some type of other force, because as everybody admits, it's extremely improbable. So if that is the way, I don't have enough faith to believe it didn't happen by pure chance.
Okay, so you're just running a mathematical equation and picking the answer that feels the most comfortable.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
It feels to me like you're saying, I have two options here. I could either accept that this happened and it was unlikely, or I could accept that it happened, but it was more likely because it was guided by some kind of mind or force that wanted it to happen. So I'm going to pick that one.
I think you said that perfectly.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So maybe Gohan is talking about panspermia.
I can't tell you what that is. Sorry.
No worries. So that could be as easily explained as an alien coming down and dropping.
Then we're back to aliens.
Well, but the idea that life found its way here is the kind of panspermia. The seeds of life were planted here. There's definitely no.
I used to think that was Richard Dawkins' idea. But I found out recently it's not. But no, I don't subscribe to that idea.
Why? That's kind of more likely than the one that you're rooting for.
Well, we don't know quite what he's rooting for yet.
But all it does is it just pushes the buck back one. So then you have to ask how that life formed. So it could be, it's just it doesn't give you any answers.
Well, but then again, that's exactly the same as saying that a disembodied mind or something, powerful created it that pushes the buck back in the same way. I'm not advocating panspermia. What I'm trying to do is give you analogous situations to point out where the flaw is, and if you can find the flaw in the analogous situation, then hopefully you can find the flaw in your own.
Sure, I think that's helpful. This is probably the last thing, and then we'll move on to evolution. But the difference between those two is, in my argument, God would be a uncaused thing that causes creation, and the transpermia, I don't know if I said that correctly.
Panspermia.
Panspermia. The life that was created would not be uncaused. It would still have to be caused.
Why?
So God was uncaused. That other life would be caused somehow. So
why, though?
That just pushes the buck back. Are you asking why that life would have to be caused?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't there in the beginning.
How do you know? What if they were eternal aliens? What if they were there from the beginning?
I think we have good evidence that shows that the time had a beginning and the universe had a beginning.
Why are you assuming the aliens are bound by space-time?
They could have come from another universe.
I have no evidence of another universe.
So how are you making these statistical probabilities in your head?
No evidence of another universe is zero.
We also have no evidence of mindless, of disembodied minds, and the thing is, we agree that when there's not evidence for it, you should discard it because there's no reason to believe something without evidence. And so we're giving you examples and you're agreeing with us. We're just wondering why you're not agreeing that this God concept fits the exact same thing.
Yeah, I'm a difficulty understanding why you guys aren't agreeing with me either.
Well, here's the deal, Gohan. At this point, this is where a lot of these arguments start getting circular. And if you can avoid that, then you are miles ahead of some of the biggest apologists out there right now. So right now, it comes down to, is there evidence, because we've agreed that that is necessary, whether or not it's good, for a disembodied mind outside of space-time that was here since the beginning existing? And if we agreed that that was the case, that there was evidence, then we would be able to move forward. But if it's a premise in your argument, then we have a problem, because you can't say there was a disembodied mind that created things, therefore there's a disembodied mind because it created things. Do you see how that goes in a circle?
I do, but that's not where the argument is starting. The argument is starting with the improbability of life forming on its own.
What is
And
the
if that is true, then
Right. But what is the probability of a disembodied mind outside of space-time?
I couldn't tell you.
We couldn't either.
But,
Yeah. No, exactly. We can't know because we don't know what that is, or if it could exist, or what it would look like if it did or didn't. It's an unfalsifiable statement.
Well, it's not unfalsifiable. If you have any evidence that shows space-time is eternal, then that would falsify any argument that says a God created it.
No, actually.
How? If it's eternal, how was it created?
Sure. So, I got what you're saying. But I guess in my mind, what I'm thinking is, let's say you proved that the universe was eternal. I can imagine lots of Christians saying, yeah, God's eternal too, duh. So
People have posited that maybe the universe just always has been, and the next thing out of the other person's mouth is, well, that's the Grim Reaper fallacy. That's infinite regress. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. So I know that you said we could say that technically and it would disprove it, but it wouldn't actually.
Yeah, and yeah, I've also talked to people who've said in Genesis 1, God's in the beginning, God stood upon the surface of the water, and like the way that that's described, I can absolutely imagine Christians incorporating that in and it not falsifying a damn thing. Maybe you know what the problem is, Gohan? We're jaded. We're jaded.
We're jaded?
We're jaded.
I feel like that's. I'm 29, but I feel like that's too hip of the lingo for me. Can you explain what that means?
Oh no, I'm old. Fuck, god damn it.
That was a very polite way to say that's something I don't know yet, old man.
Yeah. So Gohan. Yeah, I'm 30. I'm gonna turn 35 soon. Anyway.
You are.
Gohan, what I'm saying is we're disillusioned. We've interacted with enough people to know that what might falsify things for you has not historically falsified things for others, and because of that, it feels like a exercise in futility sometimes. And so,
I think you guys, even like C.S. Lewis was farther down the path than you guys are. So, nobody's too far down either path to change their mind.
Oh, don't.
Including.
Oh no! Oh, you started with C.S. Lewis. I'm going to give it to B. Gohan, you did this to yourself.
No, I'm actually going to advocate that. Hey, we are 7 minutes away from time.
Holy crap! We have like 2 calls.
To evolution or no?
We
Gohan,
have to get some other callers.
We really would love to, and I think that is going to be where most of the meat of this conversation is. I just don't think we're going to have time today, but please call back.
I'll call back another week. I'll just say I do see evolution being true and as more evidence for God, and maybe I'll continue with that next call.
Please do.
That's why I'm disillusioned. Take care, Gohan.
Oh my God.
That is the structure of the conversation that I want to see had more, right? The way that it's interacted with back and forth, where both sides take turns going, hey, you know what? Here's where I'm comfortable, here's where I'm knowledgeable, here's where I'm not knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And finding where we can productively move forward, or at least clearly identify where our splits are.
Yeah.
I like that.
So we have two options. We could go over and talk to these last three callers, or we could ask them to call back next week.
We had 2 callers?
We had 3.
3 callers? Let's run long and take one more.
All right. Well, taking one more caller, we are going to run long. So if you would like to stick around, please do. If not, then thank you for joining us today.
Who are we talking to?
So I have so many questions for all 3 of these people.
I know.
But I did invite Mark to call the show via our Twitter.
Okay, Scott.
Or our YouTube.
Scott and Chris, we really, really, really want to talk to you. We ran out of time. Please call again next week. Thank you so much.
Please do.
Okay, then Mark in California, do you want to read the notes?
Sure. So Mark commented on a couple of our videos about Atheopaganism and kind of how that factors in. This is, I believe Mark is an Atheopagan, so I'm curious to hear more about that. Mark, thank you for waiting and welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Non-theist paganism generally is kind of a modern approach to spirituality that avoids many of the kind of evidential and rational pitfalls of the pre-existing religions. Our cosmology is that of science. We're a skeptical religion. We believe in what science has verified to be real. So we don't believe in gods, we don't believe in souls, we don't believe in magic or spirits or ghosts or any of that kind of stuff. So our spirituality is the spirituality of the verifiably real. And we have seasonal celebrations around the course of the year. We revere the sacred earth, which we are a part of and which gives rise to us and sustains us, which is an opinion. It's not an ascription of divinity to the earth. It's just an opinion about its value. And we operate according to ethical principles. It's kind of a really short version.
Beautifully put to me. What do you think, Faye? Anything else you want to?
Well, I mean, okay. Like, I think that, sure. I have very many, some of my favorite callers on here are Atheopagan, and I think that it's a very interesting way of looking at the world and one that I can understand.
Okay, can I offer up an analogy to help understand it a little bit better?
Sure.
I'm still a little bit in the dark.
Yeah.
When I talk to somebody who says that they're culturally Jewish, they're talking about how they culturally hold on to practices and all that, but they're not necessarily believers. When V talked to me about witchcraft and about the different practices and things therein, that a lot of people do that as a way to connect with something. It is kind of in air quotes a spirituality, but not in any kind of wooey way, but just in a there's value in tradition. There's value in, ritual, and things like that. Like there are things that calm us. And so when you say you're an Atheopagan, it sounds like it's that for pagans. That there could be.
Well, almost.
Okay.
Almost. Because there are a lot of people in the pagan community that don't agree with us either, because we don't believe in magic and we don't believe in gods. So while the rituals that we practice may be similar to the rituals that other pagans practice, and the celebrations that we have around the course of the year at the solstices and equinoxes and the points in between are similar to what many pagans practice, there are also some real differences in terms of our values, in terms of our what we hold sacred, what our ethical principles are, all that kind of stuff. So I actually have a podcast called The Wonder Science-Based Paganism, that I co-host with my co-host Yucca. And we talk about these issues from the standpoint of a science-rooted spiritual practice. The idea is that we're working to build a relationship with the natural world around us, which includes humanity, so that we live deeper, more fulfilled, happier, and more effective lives, and we contribute to the creation of a better world, which is a very different sort of approach than trying to get to an afterlife or seek redemption or something like that.
Mark, as an aside, and this is just for people who call in the future, give us the opportunity to let you plug yourself, just as a courtesy. Give us the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Mark,
but
I think that, like, this is where I come up against a lot of stuff, and I'm actually writing a book. I'm actually writing a book about this exact kind of perspective.
The one day you're not wearing glasses is the day.
Which is, it was a defense mechanism. If I did, I would be insufferable. It essentially, this idea that there can be people without beliefs or rituals at all, I think, is false. And I know a lot of atheists will very much disagree with that. I've had many an atheist say, I have no beliefs, or I never do any rituals. I'm like, do you get up in the morning and you make coffee? That's a ritual.
Wonderful ritual, making coffee.
Oh, yeah. So, like, I think that Atheopaganism, or some version of that, whether that's versions of witchcraft that don't ascribe to the supernatural, or anything that combines that neuroscience perspective with the understanding that this is the way our brains work. We tell stories, we make comparisons, we put things in boxes, we find deeper meanings, we search, we yearn for analogy and metaphor. If you are building a worldview around that, especially one that is based on harm reduction and making the world a better place, cool. Like, I'm not going to nitpick about what you call yourself or any of that. I think we're on the same page.
Actually, in fact, if there are atheists who culturally or practice these things because they feel value or feel good about them, I would love to, if we're on tour, to get the opportunity to experience some of them, because it was a culturally Jewish household that brought me in, and I got to experience the high holy days.
Yeah.
And getting those opportunities could be fun.
Right. And I think a lot of it is just, there's a lot of baggage that a lot of these words have, right? And I think there are some people who say, well, we should leave the words behind. We should leave the word paganism behind if we're not actually a pagan. In the sense of, like, worshiping gods, or we should leave the term religion behind, or ritual, or spiritual. All of these words that, granted, were pretty much invented by religious Christian people, at least in the iteration we have them in. Like, spiritual specifically comes from trying to explain something from the Bible, at least our version of it. And so, like, I get it. I get why a lot of people are squeamish. I get a lot of why people get defensive around it. But there is an equally relevant perspective here, which is we can take those words back. We have done it before. We will do it again. If there are words that work, then if there are words that speak to you, there is no one prescriptive definition for a word. So if you are somebody who loves nature and wants to, make the world a better place, and also finds a lot of meaning in certain mythologies and certain rituals, and the term atheopagan works for you, use that term. The only thing I would ask, and this is of you, Mark, and it sounds like you are already doing this on your own, and for everybody else who's listening, if you are using words that could be triggering for people or could put them on the defensive, be understanding of that and be willing to have that conversation. Sure. I call myself an atheist witch. I just do, because I like the look in people's faces.
Oh, it pisses off so many.
And
atheists.
It pisses off so many people on every angle.
Yeah.
And if I were to drop that and then walk away and be like, it's not my problem what you think that means, okay, cool. But, like, I think that that's irresponsible use of that power. Because then I have the opportunity to go, oh, you look uncomfortable. Tell me what your assumptions are about atheism or about witchcraft or about any of these things. Let me help you find a more nuanced viewpoint.
Ooh, so are you saying that Mark, in taking on the title of Atheopagan, is inviting people to ask him about?
That's how I would use it. I can't speak for Mark. Mark, why that word? Is that something that you find as well?
Well, I should clarify. Atheopaganism is a particular path within non-theist paganism, which is a broader umbrella. Atheopaganism is a path that I developed about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And we have about 4,000 followers around the world right now. And a nonprofit religious organization and stuff like that. But it's a particular path with an articulated set of principles and, a lot of guidance around creating rituals and support for the members and so forth. When I chose that name, it was because it was a melding of atheism and skepticism, of course, and paganism. And so I just chose that name. What's ended up happening is that name has ended up sort of blurring into other non-theist paganism somewhat. So there are people who call themselves atheopagans who aren't actually following the path that I created, which is fine. That's fine. People should follow the paths that they want. Going to your original point, I really consider all of these questions to be openings for conversations.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people in our community who are escapees from various kinds of conservative religion that have inflicted trauma on them. And in many cases, they have this real expression of relief when they find our community, because they wanted the community and the rituals and the meaningful sense of place in the universe. They just didn't want the guilt and the shame and the supernatural and the lack of critical thinking and the credulity.
Yeah.
And so that is what we are offering.
Cool. And
it's a path that it's kind of a cafeteria path where, take what works for you and morph what doesn't. We're not doctrinaire. So to me, I'm just interested in having these conversations because I feel that an earth and humanity oriented religious path with modern values rather than Bronze Age values. And that could get me started on the conversation about virtues, which you had a while ago, but I'll leave that for the time being.
Yeah, we're over time, unfortunately. I got to try and wrangle you.
Okay.
Mark, the fact that you are building community and building up values and all of that, I hope that people continue to do that. The fact that you're doing that sounds great. And the fact we're probably going to find places where we disagree, which is expected. But I love that you called in. V, I feel like you asked Mark to call in. If there's anything else you want to ask, I'd hate to rob you of the opportunity.
No, Mark, thank you for taking me up on that and calling in.
And talking about it, because people, like that's cool.
Yeah, 100%. I may hit you up later for stuff, if that's okay.
Oh, sure. That's fine. Happy to talk with you for your book. I'm writing a book right now. I've got one out already, but I'm writing another one. And the intersection with the atheist community is really an important one from our standpoint, as much as it is for the pagan community. So this is an important thing for me to do.
Sure.
Awesome.
Mark, thank you so much for calling in. And yeah, well, I'm sure V will hear from you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh,
cool. Thank you.
One more thing. Mark.
Yeah.
Did you hear that V joined a religion?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
I did. Yeah, the Church of the Prismatic Light. I've been seeing about that on TikTok, and it sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
What are they doing that you're not doing?
I don't know what they're doing in the way of rituals. It sounds to me like they've mostly set up to advance a set of values. Mm-hmm. And my very quick synopsis of what I believe a religion is a cosmology, a value set, and a set of practices.
Got it. So it doesn't fit.
Well, it's a very politically
ahead.
motivated situation,
Fair
as
enough.
opposed to
But
what
I'm
I'm
trying.
understanding.
I'm trying to browbeat Mark here.
I'm aware we are also over time.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh my goodness.
I'm an ass. I
What
know.
are they doing that you're not? Jesus.
What? If somebody's a community builder and heck yeah, I'm gonna be a thorn. Anyway, so before we read super chats, this show is brought to you by you. It's your support that keeps us going. If you like what we do, you want to get ad-free versions of the show, ad-free versions of the podcast. If you want to get the chance to talk to us either in a group or one-on-one, see the stuff that we put out. We've been putting out more again. Just for patrons exclusives, patreon.com/Skeptic Generation. Also, we are collecting super chats to go towards our goals. This is going towards into the bucket for a producer. We've got work to do.
We do. We now need to figure out what to do with a producer, and how to find one, and how to train one. And it's going to be interesting, but we get to do that now as opposed to next year because of our amazing guardian angel.
And we have so much reshuffling to do. We're at a computer with a camera right here and the computer's right here. And so we can't sit a producer between us. And so we're going to need to move things and figure it out. And I'm excited.
It's going to end up looking
Just be
really
patient
cool.
with us. Definitely. Let's start. Viper Zang sent $2 and says, a surprise birthday party, but you surprising us?
Yeah, for our surprise stream.
Oh, that's right.
Exactly. I prefer that kind of birthday party. I want to be the one to set up my birthday party and surprise other people because I don't like surprises. Amit Matthew sent $10. Thank you, Amit. It says, great call. I'm amazed that there are still believers in HG.
Heaven's Gate.
Me too.
Yeah, I worry, V, you said it before, the idea that, we don't want to platform dangerous things. And yet at the same, there's just so much, and you wonder where our responsibility is as content creators and as people with the platform. It's just, there's so many pieces. I know I'm going to be kicking myself for the next 5 hours. Sarah Dye sent $20 and says, just wow. Epic Colin, I'm so glad that Sawyer and Partner came upon your show and called in. Great to see this with two great interlocutors. Thank you, Eric and V. Sarah, when I'm reading the comments telling me I'm absolutely screwed it up, I'm going to remember that. Thank you. I'm going to hold on to that.
Brits Craig sent $50.
Wow.
Thank you so much, and says, here's some monetization.
Agreed, because we are
Thank
so
you.
not getting.
No, this has been a wash in that regard,
We're
but
taking
it
a
was
hit.
fun. It was so fun this
It
episode.
was. Amit Matthew sent $20 and says, thank you. Says, demonetized video, you say? Thanks for pushing back.
Thank you. Sarah Dye sent another $10 and says, I love you too.
Aw, thank you. Tumbles and Drumbeats sent $10 and says, to help you two cope with the pain of this episode, there is a place that serves White Russians
As milkshakes.
and we're gonna,
Empress Lizard sent $20 and says, for a drink after the show is over.
Okay, could we use that $20 for a drink, or are we putting that in towards our pot that we?
I think if Empress Lizard specifically said that one was for a drink, then we must comply.
Sweet. Thank you. Sarah Dyson, $10 and says, such a great show, so captivating that I forgot to drink my coffee and now it's cold. Or you could make iced coffee. V made iced coffee this morning and I love it. Please, please, please do that again. I love it.
Simply Haven also sent $50.
Holy crap.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much to think about. Thanks for keeping me intrigued. Thank you
Yay.
for staying and watching.
Micaiah Snow sent $10 and says, I wanted to say the odds argument from last week is even worse than Eric described. If you have two universes and one is different, 50-50, and it just gets worse. 3 then 1/3, 4 then 1/4, yada yada. I'm sure 10 minutes after we end the episode, that'll click for me, but I think that I'm a little frazzled after all those calls. It's going to take me a sec.
RG sent $2.99 in Australian dollars. Thank you. And says, see what you did, V. Churches came out to play. For real.
Yeah.
For real. This was the cult episode.
I guess. Oh, did you call Mike a cultist? Mike, you're a nice guy.
Mark
Mark
is not a cultist.
Okay, I also don't remember names apparently. Viper Zang sent $5 and says, God could be a fourth dimensional alien leader from a city within time itself. Would that be our first callers?
Within time itself, that's our second caller, where they're able to convert life forms to live in our third dimension, which is the third caller.
The Atlantis.
Viper Zang just combined Heaven's Gate with Atlantis with the fine-tuning argument for abiogenesis.
I'm getting like,
it just makes
conspiracy theory.
It just makes too much sense. I'm convinced.
Right?
I guess I believe this now, and
Connecting
this is my
all
new
of
religion.
the dots. This is our Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
John Klein sent $5 and says, "This donation is intentionally meant for building the Skeptic generation's super AI computer. Make it so.
Will
We
do."
will.
And then Jesse Chappelle sends $6.66 with a little heart. Thank you, Jesse. I know I saw you came in late, you overslept, but we're glad you got some rest.
Yeah, I absolutely love. I'm trying to pay attention to the calls, but also reading in the live chat, the way that people are interacting with each other and engaging with the content is incredible.
So cool.
We've got so much to do. We are going to be updating patrons as we make progress and putting stuff out.
Yeah.
But until next week, we're glad we
had this talk. Kind of. This was a rough one.
Yeah.